Are we live? Great. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. This is Jatin Narang. I'm founder and CEO of Verito. And today I'm presenting Contractor Chaos. We will discuss security workflows for temporary and outsourced staff. A little bit about me. I have been the founder. We founded Verito around 9 years ago, but I've been a Microsoft certified system engineer for over 15 years. I'm on Forbes Technology Council. I love cybersecurity. I love IT, and that's what I do. That's what we do at Verito for tax and accounting firms. So let's dive right into it and discuss the main problem that we face right now. Imagine a situation where it's January 20th, you got a new temporary staff that's a contractor. You just need them for the season, and they need access right away. So you give them your password, thinking about you'll change it later. Comes 3 months, they'll leave because they were a temporary contractor, but the password you shared is still active. 6 months later, you find out that your data is leaked online. Your client files are out there on the dark web. And that's the situation is of your own creation, I would say, because it's not the contractor. They are not really the risk. It's the way your workflows are designed. And this is what we are going to fix today. We'll discuss how exactly you can go about same situation. Because when you're doing business, majority of the times you would go with contractors for the temporary staff for the tax season. And why exactly does this matter? Because in terms of the contractor or whoever worked on those files, it doesn't really matter to IRS and FTC who touched your data and how long were they there for, whether it was a temporary staff or a full time. It's ultimately your responsibility. For everyone, whoever has access to your data, you as firm owner are responsible. And look at the numbers. Average breach cost $300,000. $300,000 is what an average breach costs. There's another startling figure that majority, more than 60% of the small businesses close shop within 6 months of getting hacked. Within 6 months, because they cannot really afford to pay back, they cannot really afford the reputational damage that it causes you whenever there's a breach. So it is business critical. It is something that can jeopardize your entire reputation, your firm, your business. So it is something that is to be taken very seriously. And another startling figure is average time to detect a ransomware hack or a breach is more than 6 months. So if you were breached, anytime, most probably you'll find out about it in the next tax season when you're trying to file again and it's failing, or somebody submitted a fake refund request, or anything for that matter that gives you the idea that yes, there was a breach. Yes, your data was leaked. And finally, to rub it in further, your insurance would not pay you if they find that it was because of you, or because of the policies that you have, or because of something that you created that didn't actually help protect your data. So that is why this is a very serious matter. So let's discuss on a higher level what exactly you can do. So there are three workflows. And if you cannot do it in these three workflows, you got to rethink your workflow right now. So build these workflows that you can start using next week onwards. First and foremost, you do secure onboarding. Whenever you're onboarding a new contractor, it's got to be done within an hour. You got to follow a proper checklist to ensure they're onboarded. Then there's role based access. No matter whoever there is in the company, you ensure that they only have access on when needed basis, and automated offboarding. So if any of the contractor is leaving you, there's got to be an automated offboarding process, or there's got to be a checklist that you can follow to ensure that there's no loose ends. So let's discuss who exactly we're talking about here. We're talking about people like year end contractors, we are talking about outsourced bookkeepers. There are numerous businesses in today's time because of the advent of technology and because of after COVID, what we've seen is people outsourcing more than ever, not just locally, even to outsourcing different countries like India, Philippines, even some to South America. So, whenever you're outsourcing to any bookkeeper, again, it's your responsibility of how they're handling the data. Then there are seasonal tax preparers, again, the temp staff that we discussed. Overflow admin support, you needed somebody from the admin in real time basis just for the temporary work. And then there is a remote data entry staff, just like we said, outsourcing. So they need access to everything that matters because you need to understand what exactly you're giving them access to. You got to give them access to your tax software. It's your gold mine. You got to give them access to your CRM. You got to give them your email or one of the email at your companies. And then your accounting platforms like QBO or Xero or Sage, whatever you're using. So you are actually letting them in to the safest and most secure space that there should be in terms of data that you have. So imagine a situation like you go to a hotel, when you check in, do they give you a master key that gives you access to every room or even a safe or even manager's room? That doesn't happen, right? They only give you access to your room that is assigned to you and gym, of course. So think of your business as the similar way. Like you have a hotel, you're letting people in temporarily, you got to give them access, you got to ensure that there are these gates that they go through while they're there and when they leave out so that they don't get access to anything else that they're not supposed to. And the access is blocked. Like whenever you check out of the hotel, the same key that you had will stop working. So it's got to be the same way in your firm as well. So let's discuss this framework of three different gates. Gate number one is onboarding before they touch anything. How do you ensure they have all the accesses ready, everything that you want to give them access to? You do the interview, you assess them, their qualification, you get them signed up, you do everything. And then gate two is access control while they're working with you, which is operational time. What kind of access they have? How do you limit it? How do you control it? And then there's a gate three through which they are leaving. So that's the offboarding. So let's go one by one through these three gates. So first and foremost, the golden rule is 1 hour rule. If you can't onboard securely, if you can't onboard somebody securely in under 1 hour, you'll skip the security part. You will rush. You will have to ensure that everything is mandatory, whether it is a strong password, whether it is a 2FA. You gotta have everything in place before you give them access to the most secure area of your firm. So let's go in detail about the onboarding checklist, which is gate one. So before they even get access to anything, before they even start working, what do you do? First and foremost, get an NDA signed up because they are going to get access to your client files. They are going to get access to privileged information, which is critical to your business. So there has to be a signed NDA. Then there is a signed acceptable use policy of that data that they will get access to. Don't just go by word. Don't just think these things won't come handy. These things are super important whenever things go wrong. Think of it as an insurance. Then, of course, you got to do your background check on them because they're going to handle client returns, PIIs, sensitive information about your business and your clients. And then documented role and access level. There's got to be predefined roles. There's got to be predefined checklist of what all they need access to, what all they should have access to. And you do that by the book. Don't just make any exceptions. There has to be these things where you have everything laid out. Day one, whenever they're starting. So, first, you create unique credentials. You don't create credentials that are shared. Don't have any unnamed credentials or credentials that are like admin or tax prepare one or T prepare, something like that, that you shared among users, because that way you will not be able to do a trail check of who got access to what, who made what changes. So there's got to be unique credentials to their name so that it's easier to identify in future as well, so that you're not sharing any logins. Then you enable two-factor authentication, and there's got to be no exceptions to that. Whenever we're talking about security, it's always an ongoing battle between convenience and security, like how secure you want to be or how convenient you want it to be. A real life example would be, to this day, a lot of people would have their passwords on a post it note stuck to their desk because they prefer convenience. And how secure is that? Zero security. Similarly, how do you go about security? Like you have a strongest password, like you need strongest password that you can have, like 12 digit or 16 characters. On top of that, you have two factor authentication. Some of the firms have even adopted to going with a physical key so that it's not even the phone. But I always recommend having at least a phone. If you find an employee who's hesitant to using their phone as two factor authentication, you don't sign them up. It's got to be that simple. You have to have zero tolerance around these policies because, again, it's your client files that they trust you with at stake. And it's your name, it's the reputation that you've built over so many years or even decades for so many people that can just vaporize in an instant as soon as there is a breach. So, again, it's that critical. Then you assign them to a security group. Like I said earlier, there's got to be documented role and access level. So you got to have a dedicated security group for temporary staff that you give them access to, or you just add them to so that they get access to whatever they need access to. Then there's got to be an expiration date. So when you're sure when they're leaving, so you can set an expiration date of April 16th so that you know that even if you forget to disable their login or change the password, God forbid if you actually did share a password. So if you want to change the password, then you're not waiting on your memory because your brain would already be fried by April 15th. So you wouldn't know. And it's that window that makes you vulnerable. So you got to make sure you do all the things automatic as possible. So you set an expiration date, you know, if you have to extend, you can just do it by then in real time. So let's go through the call after you've done their initial stuff. So what is a 15-minute onboarding call looks like? Yeah, you can get on a Zoom call when there's a remote employee, or it could be a 15-minute talk when they're in your office. So you give them a clear understanding of whatever they can access. Like you give them access to tax software, accounting software, you show them how do they go about things. Majority of the time they would already be experienced, but still there will be things that are subjective to your firm. So you give them access to however the kind of folder tree you have, and then you also let them know how do they request more access so that they don't find a workaround. They don't try to find a hack around it. You gotta let them know how exactly they can request, how simple it is, whether they gotta email you or call you or ask you in person, whatever your process is, make sure it is documented so that again, you're not just depending on your brain. So you give them access and you let them know how exactly they can request more access. And then there's got to be zero tolerance things. You got to let them know, you got to set the tone of what would fire them, get them fired immediately, or something that is auto fire offense. Things like if they share their credentials with anyone. Sometimes people get smart. So it's a husband working, he shares a file, he shares the credentials with the wife just to handle, help with some of the stuff. It may not be malicious intent, but just an operational requirement, but still at the same time, it is a zero tolerance policy. It is something that can wreak havoc on your client files. Then accessing files outside their role. So you gave them a proper folder tree where they should go to access client files. And if you find them struggling or trying to find a way around to get access to another folder, that means there is a malicious intent. That is another auto fire offense. Then there is a using personal device without VPN. Same goes with public Wi-Fi. So you got to provide them a VPN. They should never be logging in to your tax software or accounting software or any of your folders without a VPN. That is a must, because then that makes sure that your data, whatever they are transmitting, is always encrypted. Whether it is a personal device or a public Wi-Fi, a VPN's gotta be must. And then, of course, downloading client data to personal storage goes without saying. It is an auto fire offense, because your tax software would always give you two-factor authentication option, but you gotta have ensure that two-factor authentication is enabled across the board, and you limit their access as much as you can. You limit their ability to export data at large or copy and paste data at large, so that you know there's nothing phishing going on. Now let's talk about the gate two. They've already started working on your firm. They already got access. How do you ensure that they are operationally on the right access level, that they are not accessing something they're not supposed to? A common mistake that we see is giving them access to everything, because it's the easiest way to onboard a new employee. You give them admin access, you give them access to all the software, because you don't want to deal with that kind of stuff when you're busy. That is one of the most common mistakes that we see people making. Your full-time employee who've been with you for numerous years, or even whoever started a couple of months ago, should have a very different access level than a temporary contractor that you just hired. So you have to ensure there are three different tiers, and you only go with those. You don't just, give them access to everything that they're not supposed to. So you create these different user groups, you create the permission levels, you add people to those groups. You don't give them access to everything. Now, may I know how many of you have actually tried outsourcing to another company, or maybe a different country altogether? For any work, it could be tax or accounting, anything for that matter. Let me see if I can access chat here. All right. I'm sorry, but I don't see the chat here. Okay, chat is on the right. Okay, I got it. Q&A. Wait, I see a lot of people about Q&A. All right. Yes. So people have used US based. People are trying, but they haven't used yet. And I see somebody already using Verito, and they're exploring outsourcing for the upcoming tax season. Great. Oh, yeah. I see Laura's answer, which three people have upvoted. Like, they're really considering outsourcing internationally, because, again, that helps with your workflow. That helps because of the cost effectiveness of it. And there are a lot of people that are in the process. But at the same time, like I said earlier, security protocols are must. And I see it is a very valid concern that you don't know what they would get access to. You don't know how to limit their access. And that is exactly what we are discussing here. You add the NDA, you check their protocols. Whenever you're going with an international provider, majority of the time, it will not be a single person. It will be rather a company that's doing this for a living. So it's really obvious that you can ask them about the security policies in the office. You can ask them about videos. You can ask them about, there's got to be a waiver that I'm sorry, there's got to be a document that you sign that limits their ability to acceptable access policy. So you always go through that due diligence process. Maybe try to find some references of people who worked with them in the past, so that you can hear some practical advice of people who've used them in the past. So we've seen a lot of that because of the way Verito functions, because of the ability that we provide. We see it every other day. Some of the firms outsourcing to different countries, and we help them establish the security protocol in between so that they don't have to worry about their data first leaving the US and then somebody gaining unauthorized access to that, like limiting it to their office, whitelisting their office IP address so none of the employees can access outside the office, and you get access to every log of everybody who logged in, what was the IP address of their device, and what was the IP address of the device they approved their login with. So that kind of granular access gives you that peace of mind that they have, that you have full control, and you have full visibility of what's going on with your data. So let's go back to the slide and let's discuss the three tiers that we're talking about of people that you give them access to. So first tier is data entry only, which is like you assign client files. So somebody who's only doing data entry work. So you give them access to your client files. What they can do is they can download the files, access to the clients, and modify the permissions. What they cannot do is input data in basic bookkeeping. So there's I'm sorry, I think it's jumbled. So it's got to be what they can do is input data and basic bookkeeping, and what they cannot do is download files, access the clients, and modify permissions. So you got to ensure that you have that figured out in the tier one. So you create these different security groups and you assign people according to that. So you only give them access to what they should have. The second one is tax preparation and bookkeeping. They can access your all client files, all active clients in their queue, whatever you assign to them, whatever clients you give them access to. What they can do is prepare returns, reconcile books, and client communication. They can talk to your clients, email back and forth, use your practice management tool to engage with the clients. But what they cannot do is delete any of the files, delete any of the logs, or access your firm documents, some of the personal returns that you have. They have a separate password. And then they should not have access to approving any of the payments. So this is good for seasonal tax preparers or contractor bookkeepers that you hire. Lastly, it'll be a senior contractor or a consultant that you hire, a fractional consultant or fractional advisor per se that gives you consultation work. So you can give them access to all client files, some firm operations. They can review the work of done by every other staff. They can train the staff. They have limited admin task access as well. But what they can't do, they cannot do is access your financials or modify any of the security settings so that they don't inadvertently give access to somebody else who should not have access to your data. With that, I would like to request for a poll. So, Emily, could you start with the poll, please? Okay, I just got a confirmation that poll is live. I would really like to know what's your biggest challenge with contractor security right now. Going back to my same question that I asked, if you're already doing it or if you're planning on doing it, what exactly is your biggest challenge? Great, we're getting some answers. I see that all of the above, we need a real system, is a challenge, which I expected in some way because it is not like you're not aware of the security requirements. It is not like you don't understand why data is important. That is not the case. Everybody knows whenever you're getting into financial business, whenever you're getting into financial data that you're dealing with, that is the reason FTC is actually involved. It's not really because you're a tax preparer. It's because you're dealing with the financial files. You're dealing with the PIIs of your client. So again, that is why it is actually real reason to worry about giving anybody access to that data. So we'll talk about that more when you move forward, and we'll discuss how exactly we can go about securing your firm and how exactly you can go about securing that secure tunnel that you build between you and that contractor. So let's talk about first and foremost the email rule. Because your clients are communicating with that contractor, the contractor is going back and forth with the clients if they need access to certain things or any information from the client. So first and foremost should be that contractors get external tags on their email. You must have seen that from some of the corporate emails that you get from some of the providers, where you see the just before the subject line, you would see external in the parentheses. That highlights that they are to your clients mainly. And I mean, it gets on every email, but your client would know that this is someone who's working externally and who they should limit their communication with. They should not be sharing everything with them, and they would understand that there is another precaution that is to be taken care of. Your team knows that, your clients know that. So that way you're not worrying about, giving them all the access and they talking to your clients and getting every information that they should not have access to. With that, let's move to our last gate, which is the offboarding gate. So when they leave, you have 24 hours to lock everything down. There's got to be a checklist that you follow. It's got to be a printed checklist that you have. Again, don't memorize, don't trust your brain with this. So the first and foremost is you disable all of their accounts, including the email. Revoke all the system access. You disable their login to the Windows system or any of the tax software, whatever emails or anything that you created for them. What I would recommend, a lot of firms are now utilizing for all things online, utilizing single sign-on, which is basically like whenever you go to a website, you see the option with logging in with Google or log in with any other such email provider. So if you do that, and whenever you block their email, it blocks their access to every other website. So try to do single sign on as much as possible, wherever possible, so that you can just disable that and you know it is disabling everything. And again, God forbid, if you did share a password in the beginning, you gotta change it right away. Retrieve your company devices. If you gave them a company laptop or a phone or anything, you got to get it back and document their final date of access. Then you do the exit interview. Remember, for a tax professional, and I'm sure majority of you are already aware, let me ask another question. How many of you are already have a WISP, a written information security plan, which you actually prepared or got help from somebody else to prepare it for you? How many of you have it? Let's see, we have almost 120 people in this session. I want to see how many of you already have a WISP. So far, I've only got one answer. It's two. Great. I see majority of them are positives, some of them are negatives. Great. Now, I don't know how many of you knew that your WISP is mandatory to renew your PTIN. If you do not have a WISP, you cannot renew your PTIN. IRS asks you about it on the second page when you're renewing your PTIN, yet whether or not you have a WISP. And by WISP, they don't mean just a document or just a template. It's got to be an active WISP where you updated everything. The reason I asked is a WISP requires you to list out all the devices that you have in your business, all the people that got access to that business, and you got to have a signed contractor or subcontractor agreement that includes your NDA from that person. You gotta add that date to your WISP, and you have to document the date when you when you froze their access. So when they no longer have access, everything's gotta be documented in your written information security plan. Along with that, there's numerous other factors, numerous other pieces of the WISP that you got to take care of. But especially with the contractors, these are the things that go directly into your WISP. And you do not, it is not optional. If IRS finds out that you don't have a WISP and you checked that you do have a WISP while renewing your PTIN, that's a straight up violation. Similarly, for FTC safeguards, a single violation can cost you up to $100,000 in fines alone. So a WISP is a mandatory document. You can find the free template on IRS's website. Even Verito, at Verito, we also provide free template for WISP. So you gotta have it. That is at least a minimum. Download it, go through the checklist, just see what all procedures you need to follow. And by the time you finish up your WISP, you would know what security looks like, what kind of processes you gotta have in your firm. So, going back to our presentation, after the offboarding, there's got to be a 30-day rule. That is like not just for the offboarding, but a general rule of thumb for any accounts that you have. So, after 30 days of no activity, contractor accounts are automatically disabled. I would say you can have that for anybody in your firm, not just for contractors. Make sure whoever has access and whoever hasn't accessed in the last 30 days, their account gets disabled. No exceptions. I see a lot of people say, oh, they may come back. Oh, if they come back, you can onboard them again. It's as simple. Again, balancing between the convenience and the security, which is an ongoing battle. Always, whenever in doubt, always go with security. Don't go with convenience. And whenever they come back, like I said, you can onboard them again. You can re enable their login. So let's talk about how exactly, what all the tools that you use, that you already have, how exactly you go about access management. So first and foremost, there's password managers. You don't let them create their own password on their own, and you don't let them remember the password. It should be done with the password manager. I recommend using 1Password or Bitwarden. These two tools, we have no affiliation with them, but the reason I recommend them because they've never been breached. There has been LastPass, there has been a couple of other password providers that have been breached. So if your password manager is not secure, you cannot trust it. You're giving it the master key to your firm. I also see a lot of people using browsers as their password managers for the convenience again, like Google Chrome or Safari, any of that. But remember, if anybody has access to your system password, they automatically have access to that browser's password safe. They just put in the password, they gain access to everything. Do not make that mistake. Do not do that. Don't share your passwords with your contractors. Give them password managers in which the password is encrypted and they can use that to insert the password. Similarly, MFA, like I said in the very beginning, is a must. And with password manager, it becomes even easier while staying secure at the same time. Microsoft and Google accounts already have inbuilt MFA, but I would recommend using a third party tool like Microsoft Authenticator, Google Authenticator, Duo, any of those tools for all the other services. And then there's document management with permissions, like a lot of people utilize SharePoint, Google Workspace as well, while we do not recommend that, but a lot of people use that for managing their documents between inside the firm. Always have access levels over there as well. Everything's got to be logged. Everyone should have access on only need to know basis. They should not have access to everything. So you have all the tools, but in some way, shape, or form, they're not set up correctly. That's what happened majority of the time. So you got to automate your onboarding emails, set the reminders for the expiration, set the reminder for offboarding task, do weekly review with your team. Just sit down. I mean, you can do it by yourself as well. Just see who all have access to your data, who has actually left. Let's go through that checklist, like who's still here, who left last week. It really comes in handy when you are exiting the tax season. And then there is any access that has expired for anyone, or any unusual activity that you feel that is done on your data. So it's just a 15-minute exercise that you can do every week so that you don't have to go through the hassle of losing out the data. With that, can we have our second poll, please, Emily? And I see a lot of Q and A's. I would love to address those in the towards the end of the field. So this question is about: would you like a personalized demo of Verito? At Verito, we provide tax and accounting firms with the hosting and the security tools that you need. We do everything around IT so that you are not scrambling around when it comes to IT. And no matter the size, we firm thousands of firms of all sizes. You could be as small as single solopreneur or as big as employees. I mean, the largest firms we have served have more than 150 or 200 employees. So you could be anywhere between those lines, and we would love to help you getting the security dialed in, making sure everything that you have is behind a secure firewall. Right. So I do see a lot of questions in Q&A. I would definitely address those towards the end. Great. Okay. So let's move on with our next part in the presentation, which is the documentation. Like I just touched upon a couple of minutes ago about written information security plans. So this is actually part of that. So you got to document who all have access, what all they can access, and how exactly they can access everything, and when that access was granted or expired or revoked. There's got to be documentation around that all the time. There's no exceptions. So you got to make a note of everything: their name, their role, their start date, their end date, the kind of access that they had, whether or not what were they using for two-factor authentication, and what is their current status. So you got to update it whenever you get somebody signed up or whenever they're leaving your firm. So these are the pretty common objections that we get. Like, this seems like a lot of work. And if you compare it in contrast, it's 1 hour per contractor, not more than that. But a breach takes more than 6 months and costs you $300,000. And then the other one is our contractors won't like restrictions. That's again a sign of somebody who's not serious about data security. You always choose the best. Go with somebody who understands security, because it's got to be in the culture of your firm, no matter who's interacting with your client files, whether it is your employees or these contractors. Everybody's got to be dealing with the same level of security. So don't go with bad contractors. And some of the times we hear that people want to move fast during the tax season. Like I said, it's got to be done within an hour. Responding to a breach takes you 300 hours, because you know what responding to a breach looks like? First and foremost, you block every access. Then you got to let the clients know. You got to let IRS know. You got to let FTC, local authorities, and even involve a cybersecurity expert. And then you got to deal with the blowback from your clients. So it's a lot of work. So it's always better to be safe than sorry. So 1 hour in comparison to 300 hours is nothing. And then last one is: we trust our contractors. Like I said earlier, IRS doesn't care who you have a good relationship with, who you worked for the last 10 years with. It's got to be documented. because at the end of the day, that's what matters the most. So the payoff is, if you do all of that, that you're IRS compliant, you're FTC compliant, your cybersecurity insurance is covered, you do a faster onboarding, you don't leave any loose ends. So you gotta close the loop when they leave, and you sleep better during the tax season. That's what we help you do as well. But you can go with these options, whatever we discussed in the presentation, and secure yourself. I do have a real world example that I could share. It was a firm that came to us after they were breached, and we helped them secure everything. And now, they don't have any issues, but this is what happened with them. It was a 12-person CPA practice. They hired 8 seasonal preparers during the tax season. They were different, they were all in different locations, but they all shared the same login. One of the former contractors sold the access to a competitor, and it costed them almost $200,000. Again, it's not just about the monetary loss. I would really like to point out that it's the reputational loss that hurts the most, because money you can re earn, but that reputation that took you years and decades to build is so hard to rebuild. You can never gain the same level of trust. You can never gain the same client list again after a breach. So think about it. Take it seriously. Do not be one of those. And this is your 5-minute security audit that you can go with the admin panel right now. Just go through all the checklists, like, do all the contractors have unique logins? Is MFA enabled on every contractor account? Can you name every contractor with access today? Do you know them? Do you already have a memory? You would only build that memory if you do that weekly checkup that we discussed. Do contractors' accounts have expiration dates? Just to go through this checklist, and have you disabled accounts of all the contractors that have left you. If you said yes to everything or anything, no, I'm sorry, if you said no to any of these things, that you need to fix this before the tax season actually hits. And with that, I conclude my presentation right now, but this conversation doesn't end. You all have access to us at Verito. You can reach out to me or anybody at Verito to ensure you get the answers that you need. With that, let me just go through the Q&As. First of all, I would like to thank you all for joining the session and being patient with this. Let's go through the Q&A one by one. So Steve says, security for small firms, so very important to use group access. We found stragglers where we had still open access to some client files 2 years after the employee left. Yep, just like I said. So there's got to be access that you disable. Make sure that you don't leave any loose ends. Let me go through the questions from the oldest to the newest. So Steven's saying QBO really messes with VPNs, and you find that we frequently have to turn them off in order to have the software work properly. In that case, I would recommend using a secure environment, just like Verito Cloud. A lot of our clients access QBO inside our cloud because it's already secure with encryption, MDR, EDR, SOC compliance, and everything that you can and cannot think of security wise. So you can utilize that if VPN is causing any workflow issues. Andrea is saying, when using a remote desktop connection, is it important to use a static IP, or is MFA sufficient better since IPs can be spoofed, or should you have both? Well, to be honest, while using a remote desktop, your dedicated IP doesn't really matter. What matters is what is inside the remote desktop security wise, and what is outside that remote desktop along with the MFA. MFA is of course a must. But imagine a situation you gave a remote employee a remote desktop connection access to your server, but you did not enable MFA. Or even if you enabled, it was on their email. And now their computer had a keylogger that somebody planted. So they gain access to your remote desktop credentials, then their email credentials, then your eFIN credentials. So you gave out everything. whether or not they had a dedicated IP or not. So this is what really matters when you're going into remote desktop, like how exactly you provide them the access, whether or not MFA is enabled, and if the MFA is enabled, how do you ensure that their system is secure? With Carl, how do you help reticent clients accept the importance of security? Well, you gotta let them know. Again, you gotta have zero tolerance with the same thing. What we've seen, there are a couple of workarounds what people have done, because no matter how much you tell clients about security, they will always go with convenience. No matter what good of a practice management tool you do, no matter how many times you do the onboarding, whether it is Taxdome, Ignition, or anything of that sort that you use, clients would sometimes send you an email where they include their PII, no matter how many times you tell them. So we found some of the firms using an email policy where they deny any attachment. It automatically replies that we are not accepting any attachments so that you force. So I think it goes step by step. You tell them the importance of security, why it should matter to them, because again, at the end of the day, it is their data, it is their PII. It could be an identity theft for them because of whatever they did not do. So first you educate them. And when you find some of the clients that are not following through, then you have an enforcement policy like that. Or you have a one-on-one session with them where you tell them you may not be able to onboard them or you may not be able to continue working with them because whatever they're doing can jeopardize your rest of the business as well. Kaylee says, how do you get over the feeling of letting your clients down by outsourcing their information and using third parties? I feel like the trust doesn't accept us to be doing the work in house. Yeah, absolutely. But Kaylee, there are ways how you can secure that you, if you're outsourcing, that people have access, a secure access, you sign the proper contract with them, you sign a proper NDA, and you ensure you do your due diligence and you let your clients know before you onboard them how exactly you did your due diligence. I'm sorry, but there are a lot of other questions and we only have 1 minute left. So I would love to take those questions. Please feel free to go to verito.com. You can schedule a demo, schedule a call where me or any of our team member can help you. My email address is my first name, Jatin at verito.com. You can reach out to me directly if you have any specific questions. I would love to answer those. But let me see whatever I can do while the time is left. I see there's a downloadable slide. Yes, we share the slides with everyone. Is there a way you can get ahead of the data breach, Shannon? Yes, of course. You can always plan in a way so that you make it most preventable. You do everything that you can when you have all those things locked down. Even if there is a breach, IRS and FTC cannot blame you because you did everything that you were supposed to do. But we help you reach that level as well. So Janine is asking, how do we monitor what they do in return, such as tracking their time in each project? Well, that should be easy with your practice management tool that you can monitor what they are doing. You can check the cloud logs or two-factor authentication logs or when they logged in, how many hours they spent on certain software. So there's ways that you can measure those things. And yes, absolutely. I completely agree with NDA having into subcontractor and adding that additional layer in the security verbiage. So Teresa is also saying we are completely remote, so we have difficulty knowing what they're working on and how long they are spending. Teresa, there are ways how you can go about that. There are certain tools, but you cannot have monitoring tools that are doing screen recording on actually your tax software. So it becomes a bit difficult, but there are ways how you can measure that. I see a lot of people with no WISP. You can download the free WISP template by Verito, or if you need professional help, you can let us know. All right, I'm sorry guys, but we need to close the session. I'm really glad that you all joined. Thank you so much for joining in. Again, my name is Jatin. The website is Verito, verito.com. You can reach out to us if you have any questions. It was a pleasure being here. I'm really enjoying all the other sessions at WorkflowCon too. Props to Financial Sense for organizing this so that you can go this season from chaos to actually peace. I wish you all the best and looking forward to more such sessions.